Hello, welcome to this week's weekly poster roundup. We're going to be looking at all the new posters from the week of the 26th of August all the way up to the 1st of September. And we have a great show for you today. The first poster that we're going to look at is Apartment 7A. Now, I've already reviewed one of their posters before. That one, I found that the title didn't really stand out all that well. And this one, all the contrary. I do like the way that the title sticks out in this poster. I do really like this element here. The mirror that has the out-of-focus devil, which is a callback if you've seen the original Rosemary's Baby. I like how, in general, this poster has this nice kind of grainy feel to it, as if it were shot on film, which, again, if you're like a fan of the original Rosemary's Baby, that would appeal to you. In general, I do like this sort of muted color scheme with the bright 7A that really makes it pop. And I think it's got a really nice balance here with the mirror on one side and Julia Garner on the other. It's like a high beat, okay, Blink. In general, it's just a very nostalgic, very aesthetically pleasing poster. The bright colors, the sun-kissed cheeks, and like the wind blowing through the girl's hair. We get this rainbow here. I don't know if that was done in post or if that was actually shot in front of a rainbow, because that would be kind of cool. I like this effect that they do with the title, and I think it kind of speaks maybe thematically to the film. The tagline makes me suggest that the movie has this theme of like, blink or you'll miss it, like, you know, your life will pass you by kind of thing. And this sort of fading effect does make you think it's kind of like, you know, your childhood fading before your eyes. I would say, again, it's like a B. There's nothing too ambitious about this poster, but it's just aesthetically really nice to look at. All right, Catching Dust. What I do like about the concept here is that it is 3 photos kind of layered on top of each other using an opacity effect. And I like the alternating colors between the warmer and the cooler colors in this poster, where we have the sunset in the background that's like red, but we have her face, which is, you know, mostly in blue. We've got this sunset landscape here, which is sort of in red as well. And what's interesting is that in another photo that's laid on top of that one, the landscape sort of continues. You see how this landscape cuts right where her neck starts, but then the next landscape continues where this guy ends, on his chest area. So that's a really cool idea, having the landscape sort of form part of 2 photos, and for that reason it sort of migrates from a red to a blue halfway through. I really like the execution there. The logo, there's kind of cool that it is also a little bit translucent, so you can see a bit of the image behind it. But I think I'm gonna put it in A. A Complete Unknown. Instantly off the bat, this poster sort of reminds me of Am I Racist, which is a poster that I reviewed a while ago, and I would say that this is like a better version of that. Like, it's still nothing too ambitious. It's just, you know, a medium close-up of our protagonist with the text. But what I do like about this compared to the other one, for one thing, I think that the pose has a lot more character. I think in Am I Racist, I really couldn't gather what it was trying to convey. Whereas here, not only is he representing Bob Dylan, but also he's got this downward look, he's got his sunglasses. It sort of just seems to speak thematically more to the movie. I like this sort of alternating red and black. Otherwise, this would have looked really, you know, monotonous had it all been black or gray. The background isn't a plain white like it was in Am I Racist, but it's sort of a gray, and it just kind of, it makes it seem a little less cheap, you know? It gives it a little bit more depth. This is like a better version of that poster. I think it is also a B. I'm going to put in between Apartment 7A and Blink. The End. This one I'm quite excited about. It's by Joshua Oppenheimer, and I really like The Act of Killing, which was one of his documentaries he made. And this poster is really unique. I think, for one thing, it's got this really cool pose that I feel like I've never seen on a poster before. It makes you wonder what in the world this movie's about. He's on these rocks here. I think that it gives some sort of semblance of a setting for the film. You just know that this movie is going to be pretty trippy, and I just really like this effect. I don't know if that's like an actual set or if that's just design work and like it's painted on, but it's looks so cool. We have The End all in, you know, in bright red, which really just sticks out because everything else is sort of like got these kind of cooler colors to it. And I like the spacing of all the text too. The one kind of unusual thing about it is that it leaves all this kind of black negative space at the top. They sort of sacrificed that headspace to get the spacing of the text perfectly where it wants it. I'm gonna put it in A. The Featherweight is like a huge callback to like 70s poster making. Even the photos themselves look like they could be from the 70s. I honestly had to double check to make sure that this wasn't just a poster from the 70s, but it is actually a new movie. I like the shading of the characters here. Like, see how they're all sort of like desaturated, but we have some in yellow. This guy is kind of more in like a dark red. And that's cool. It just really gives this really great like texture and depth to this kind of collage of faces. There's one other thing that I quite appreciate about this. I'm assuming this is our protagonist, right? And the kind of more obvious route to take would be to make him sort of larger so that he would stand out in the poster. But they want to emphasize his small size, right? So what can they do to make him feel more of a protagonist? Well, he's the only character that actually trespasses the border of the red frame. That is a really clever way of sort of conveying information. Oftentimes festival logos don't really feel that integrated into the poster, but here I actually do like how it's within this frame and it kind of feels like it is just yet another element on the poster design. I don't think it's like an S tier per se, because it's probably doing something that a lot of other posters in the 70s have done before. Gladiator 2 teaser. Well, not much I can say about this. I'll be brief. It's just like a photo of the armor for the Gladiator. It kind of looks like this light is peering through a door that's ajar. That's like kind of nice. And the lighting is pretty cool too. Unfortunately, it doesn't really necessarily tell me that it's previewing a movie, let alone what movie it's going to be. I think like they're assuming that Gladiator 2 is such a big event, people are going to know what this poster is sort of about. Frankly, it's not even much of a design, right? Because it's basically just a photo. I'm going to pop this in the C. Okay, Haunted Heart. This is a pretty generic poster, all things considered. We've got our floating heads at the foreground here. We've got the setting in the background with a sort of intriguing element. In this case, it's the fact that it's on fire. We've seen this poster before. I think the one thing that I think is interesting about it is this sort of all warm colored sort of vibe to it. I do think that the colors really work nicely in this poster. It's just all got this like fiery, glowy fire color scheme to it. It's nice to look at for sure. It's not an eyesore like a lot of these floating head posters are, but I hesitate to put it any higher than a C. I'm glad that these two are back to back, because this is sort of an example of doing the same thing with the red and yellow color scheme, but like just making it look way less attractive. I think it's just overkill. The color does make me think that they're in hell, but this does look pretty cheap. Again, sort of like an action poster is just our character in the foreground. We have like an interesting element in the background, but this is actually quite ugly to look at. Like, I think that the title is quite cheap looking. There's really not much I can say. It's a very standard poster, but I would look at this and kind of cringe. I think Haunted Heart has like a much better use of the warm color palette. I'm gonna put this in the D. All right, Hoard. So it's got the yellow text, and that's very, very reminiscent of just indie posters in general. It's a pretty interesting pose. I do like the way that the yellow complements this sort of like pale green wall background. I think this one's really nice. It's not like particularly ambitious though. I think I'm gonna put it in B. Okay, Hold Your Breath. All right, so I'm assuming this is for like a horror film, and you know, a pretty interesting use of contrast here. This is very low contrast image. It's pretty flat, and I do kind of like how her face is actually being covered by all this text. That's not normally a thing that that a poster would normally do for their star. Normally they would try and situate the star's face so that it is clear of any text. I guess my one sort of gripe with this is just the fact that it's not that scary. Because normally you would get a horror film, you'd get, you know, high contrast image, you would get sort of like darker, more mysterious text, but the text being all like pretty bright, and then we have this like really bright green Hulu. It sort of takes away some of the tension for me. I do still think that this is a B. Okay, Memoir of a Snail. So I often diss a lot of animated, like kids animated movie posters. I don't know if this is for kids. I think Mary and Max was pretty dark from what I remember. I think that this one's a little bit more interesting than your typical animated movie poster. It's got this sort of like tan brown color scheme throughout, and I really like the way that the colors kind of balance each other out with this sort of like pale blue at the top here. It does really put you into the feel of the movie. The title that, looks kind of like hand drawn. And I do also really like how they're sitting supposedly on the snail. But it's like a pretty subtle nod. Like if you just look at this picture at a glance, you won't necessarily know that they're sitting on top of the snail. So it kind of rewards looking at it a bit further. Again, it's like a B. Never let go. Again, we're getting like a lot. We're not getting too many amazing posters this round, but we are getting a lot of like pretty solid commercial posters. We've already reviewed a Never Let Go poster before, and I quite liked that one, and I think that this one's pretty much on par. What I do like about this is that there is sort of movement on the poster. This rope does invite the viewer of the poster to sort of like follow it up to our protagonist. I do like how this text feels like it is part of the ground, and just the text, it's sparse, but it's effective. We don't really see our protagonists up close. I might like the last one just a little bit more. I think there was a little bit more to talk about with that one. I feel like I'm going to crowd the B section. I might have to move some things around. Okay, piece by piece. So off the bat, this is a pretty nice poster to look at. We've got the yellow background, which is very Lego. It complements nicely this sort of like collage of multicolored Legos rising above it. I have two qualms with this poster. One of them is the fact that the tagline here, "Turn up the volume on your imagination," being on the same plane as Pharrell Williams makes me think that there should be just like another actor there. It just, I don't know, maybe I'm just a conservative in that sense. The other thing that I'm not a big fan of is the title here. Light blue on gray doesn't really look that good, and it's a little bit hard to read. It does take you a while to get that this movie's called Piece by Piece, I think, like, relatively speaking, compared to a poster where the title's very clear and you can see it from like a distance. If you saw this poster at a distance, you might not necessarily be able to discern the title. This is going to be a pretty boring video because I'm putting a lot of stuff in B, but I think that that's realistically where this should go. Just to uncrowd the B category, I might just go with that. Okay, Seeking Mavis Beacon. It's hard to know where to start with this. So we've got this sort of hand that's sort of like phantasmic, and we get these glowing pieces of glass coming from a screen, but we've also got this sort of astral vibe to the background. So it's hard to tell what type of movie this is going to be, given that the text here looks like it's sort of digital. That's sort of my hint, and like plus obviously like this seems like a computer screen. It's got something to do with technology. It'd be interesting to see how all of these elements on this poster are going to be reflected in the film. Normally glowy aesthetic isn't really for me. It's just like a lot of sparkles everywhere. But I just can't say that I've seen a poster quite like this before. And I think that's worth a lot. I'd be very, very interested in seeing this movie just out of sheer curiosity. And I think that's, about as high a compliment as I can give a poster. This is going to be weird, but I think I'm going to put it in A. Sonic 3. Okay, so it does this one interesting thing, which is creating a big 3 over our characters. Although that just sort of reminds me of Toy Story 3. Toy Story 3, if I recall, doesn't actually say Toy Story 3. It just has the 3 and the rest is implied. And I think that they probably could have done the same thing here because you already know this is going to be Sonic 3. It's a little redundant to have 3 twice here. I feel like a lot of animated films tends to have like the blue and the red representing the good and the evil. We've seen it a few times in this channel. I'm not going to say it's a D, but it's like a low C for sure. It's like writing between a C and a D. All right, Speak No Evil. This one's kind of interesting because it's sort of the same vibe as Hold Your Breath, no? Yeah, it's got this sort of center alignment for the title, and in fact it's a 3-word title. It's spread out that way. I think Hold Your Breath, I'm going to say, is a little bit better for a couple of reasons. I think firstly, this one is a bit scarier, so just to give it credit, I do think that this image in black and white grainy freaks me out a little bit more than the Hold Your Breath poster. But this one, it's just the text sucks for me. For one thing, I think that it's a bit redundant to have See No Evil, Hear No Evil, Speak No Evil. The reason why Speak No Evil is the title of this movie is because it's part of that famous phrase. So we don't really need to see the rest of the phrase written out. It's like if the movie Now You See Me had said Now You Don't in parentheses at the bottom. It's like it's unnecessary and redundant. Secondly, if you're going to have the whole phrase be written out, why put James McAvoy's name in between that? You'll see no evil, hear no evil, James McAvoy, speak no evil. The text in general is just sort of all over the place. I don't really know if I love the lowercase italicized no. I don't know how well that works for me. And I think that AMC Thrills and Chills already draws way too much attention because it's the one thing that's red on this thing. I don't know if I like that either. But to make it stand out just a little less, if they had just stuck it kind of closer to the text at the bottom, at least it would have looked like one block of text and it would have been a little bit neater. But having like a whole separate line just for AMC Thrills and Chills, something I have no clue what in the world that even is. Is that the production company? I don't know. Is that a film festival? This has the potential of being like a really great poster, but the execution is just so all over the place that's I'm gonna have to give it like a C. All right, the last one, Wolves. It has like a pretty muted color scheme for the characters at the bottom, giving them a lot of negative space to then fill out with this big title. It's very, very basic. I think the fact that it's an Apple original film gave them some liberties to how much stuff to put on the poster. It's very bare bones. There's so little to it that there's nothing really to criticize. I think it's like perfectly good. It's just not particularly ambitious. It serves its purpose. I think one interesting thing is the way that sugar packet does stick out as like a pink element to sort of complement the title. You know what? Just for the sake of evening things out, I'm going to put that in C. I hope you enjoyed. Comment what your favorite poster was of this week, and I'll see you with the next one.